watching StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi, and joining us from Baku is Leyla Abdullayeva. She's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson in Baku. Thank you, Mrs. Abdullayeva, for giving us time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Just to get the latest on the situation after a ceasefire was agreed in talks in the US, and there was a joint statement given from all three sides. Both Armenia and Azerbaijan are now accusing each other of violating the latest humanitarian ceasefire.
Yes, indeed. As you said, yesterday the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs came up with a statement declaring that the ministers of foreign affairs in Washington agreed for the third time to implement the humanitarian ceasefire. And according to the agreement, 26th of October, starting with the 8 in the morning, humanitarian truce has to be respected. But what we have seen on the ground, it's again what happened in the previous two times. Minutes later, in fact 5 minutes later, Armenian Armed Forces blatantly violated ceasefire, started shelling the Azerbaijani regions and towns situated in the vicinity of the conflict zone, and targeting, of course, the residential areas. So, as we have said in the beginning, we are for peaceful settlement of the conflict. And based on the goodwill of Azerbaijan and based on the principles of humanism, we say yes to the humanitarian ceasefire for the third time. And we're always loyal to our commitments. We still say that we're respecting humanitarian ceasefire, but again, we have to stress that all responsibility for gross violation of ceasefire and continued escalation in the region lies with the political and military leadership of Armenia.
Illustrating the difficulty of what's going on the ground and international, not being able to get an exact feel of what's happening, the Armenians say the same thing. They say they are keeping the truce, and it's Azerbaijan which is violating the truce.
Well, the thing is that the facts are so obvious. You know that 3 times the humanitarian truce was declared. First time on the 10th of October, hours later, in the evening, in fact, during the night time, Armenia hit second biggest city of Azerbaijan, Ganja city, with the missile attacks, killing dozens of civilians. Third time again, you know that on the 18th of October, second time, the humanitarian truce was declared, but hours before that, Armenia hit again for the second time, Ganja city, killing again more than 10 civilians. So these facts are obvious. Armenia is not only targeting the regions and towns located in the vicinity of the conflict zone, but they target the civilian areas situated far away from the conflict zone, like Ganja, Mingachever, Gabala, and other regions of Azerbaijan. And if you ask the question, why, what is the reason? Obviously, Armenia tries to get involved the third countries, third parties to the conflict. And the obvious goal of Armenia is not the settlement of the conflict, but rather to consolidate status quo based on occupation.
So how does this ceasefire be kept? Do you require monitors there, international monitors? There have been in the past as well in talk about the UN peacekeepers, international monitors. How does the international community ensure that ceasefire is kept?
Well, let us be clear that ceasefire is not the solution to the conflict. Yes. Ceasefire means to forward the peace process. And we have been committed to ceasefire starting from 1994, when in the beginning of the 90s, this aggression by Armenia started. And we have been negotiating for more than 26 years with Armenia to find a political solution to the conflict. But what happened on the ground was then a continued violation of ceasefire by Armenia and non-obeyance to the norms and principles of international law. Here we speak about the resolutions of the United Nations Security Council adopted in 1993, which demand unimpeded, full and unconditional withdrawal of the Armenian forces from the occupied territories of Azerbaijan. But what we see on the ground is that they just ignore the demands of the United Nations Security Council and other numerous decisions of international organizations, as well as they continue illegal activities on the occupied territories of Azerbaijan, including the illegal settlement in those areas. So ceasefire is not a solution, and ceasefire cannot be one-sided. This is what we say, and our demand from international community is that we should demand from Armenia to implement the demands of the international community, the resolutions of the United Nations Security Council, and start withdrawing its forces from the occupied territories of Azerbaijan. If we want peace in the region, we need to eliminate the root causes of the conflict, and the root cause is the occupation of Azerbaijani land. So we need to eliminate the fact of occupation.
When you're talking about occupation and the United Nations Security Council resolutions from 1993 onwards, do they not refer to the areas outside of Nagorno-Karabakh?
They refer both to Nagorno-Karabakh and surrounding regions of Azerbaijan. So if you read carefully the full resolutions, you will see that these resolutions recognize Nagorno-Karabakh and surrounding territories as part of the Azerbaijani sovereign territories. They name these territories as occupied territories of Azerbaijan, and they demand for full, unconditional, and immediate withdrawal of occupying forces from all the occupied territories of Azerbaijan.
Ms. Abdullayeva, when you talk about ceasefires cannot be implemented by one side, now we've also heard the President Ilham Aliyev giving an address to the nation. The impression could be that you're still standing strong because he's talking about territories that have been taken back and which will continue to be taken back. So it seems like Azerbaijan is also not willing to stop.
Well, today, Mr. President today addressed the nation, and he announced the liberated territories by the armed forces of Armenia yesterday. So the address was done today, but he was speaking about the recently liberated territories. Let me be clear that what we see now on the ground, starting from the 27th of September, is the counter-offensive measures taken by the armed forces of Armenia against the new large-scale military provocation by Armenia. So we started these counter-offensive measures because there was a new aggression by Armenia. So we are fighting on our own soil, and our ultimate goal is to protect our civilians based on the statute of the United Nations, the famous Article 51, self-defense, and also to ensure the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan within its internationally recognized borders.
You refer to Armenia's aggression wanting to get third parties or other foreign parties involved. Who are these third parties? Are you referring to Moscow?
Well, the third parties, you know that Armenia is also a member of Collective Security Treaty Organization, CSTO, and there are members in this organization, and according to this agreement, those states are taking the guarantee for the security of Armenia. So in the case, if Azerbaijan, for example, makes a reciprocal response to Armenia, because in the last cases when they hit Azerbaijan's second largest city, they made the strikes from the territory of Armenia with the aim that Azerbaijan will take the same adequate measures and they will hit the territory of Armenia instead of the occupied territories of Azerbaijan. So we said that we are against internationalization of the conflict. We are against involvement of third countries, and we said that His Excellency President said that we will respond to these attacks of Armenia in the battlefield. So we liberated our lands, which have been under military occupation for 30 years.
When you talk about third parties again, and you talked about the CSTO and the treaty alliance between Russia and Armenia, but similarly, Turkey and Azerbaijan also have a treaty, and that again talks about one nation, two states. There are accusations that the Turkish military has been involved in Azerbaijan's aggression, and mercenaries have been sent from Syria and other parts of the North African region as well.
Yeah, let me make clear this question, because many questions are asked lately about the relations between Azerbaijan and Turkey and allegations, fake news about mercenaries used on the territory of Azerbaijan. Well, the thing is that indeed, Azerbaijan and Turkey, we have very close brotherly relations, strategic partnership. It's the same also with the other neighboring countries, except aggressor Armenia, of course, that Azerbaijan has. We have a good defense cooperation with Turkey, and we have the same good defense cooperation with Russia and with the other countries. So it's not something that Turkey is fighting on the soil of Azerbaijan together with Azerbaijan against Armenia. It's absolutely not true. The support that Turkey is giving to Azerbaijan is support to the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan within its internationally recognized borders. So Turkey, as one of the leading neighboring countries in the region, is interested in peace and stability in the region and respects norms and principles of international law. That's all. So coming to the idea or allegations of foreign mercenaries, again, let's make clear that Azerbaijan today is a strong and stable country with a strong military forces. We have 100,000 regular forces ready to fight against the military provocations of Armenia and to ensure our territorial integrity. We don't need any forces, especially any irregular forces, on our soil. But if you make the comparison between Azerbaijan and Armenia, you will see that from the other side, you have Armenia, which faces a crisis, strong demographic crisis, and has a difficulty to equip its army. So it is obviously the Armenia is using extremist forces on their soil against Azerbaijan. There are so many evidences, and these evidences have been collected and presented by Azerbaijan to the attention of international organization. And in fact, the leadership of country, they say it openly themselves, saying that, for example, the president of Armenia recently gave interview to Al Jazeera and said that today Armenians from all over the world are coming to Armenia to fight in Karabakh against Azerbaijan. So these are obvious facts, and the thing is that this fair campaign is arranged by Armenia against Azerbaijan, allegedly saying that so-called mercenaries are fighting on the soil of Azerbaijan.
Ms. Abdullayeva, India has relations with both Azerbaijan and with Armenia. There's a lot of oil and trade with Azerbaijan. With Armenia, we have other linkages, including a diaspora in India. What would Baku be looking at from New Delhi? Because we've seen two statements, the latest that came out after the 27th September hostilities began and the one in July as well, where India is maintaining that both sides should cease hostilities and that diplomatic efforts supported by the OSCE Minsk group is what India looks at. Is there anything else that you would look at from New Delhi?
Well, yes, indeed. I have to say that we have a growing bilateral relations with India. And India, as you said, officially stated its position, calling both sides to decrease the tension and to prefer to start a negotiated solution of the conflict. But coming to the expectation, you know that India is also an active member of the non-aligned movement, and currently Azerbaijan is also chairing the non-aligned movement, and non-aligned movement is based on the Bandung principles, the leading principles, which also includes the respect to the territorial integrity of state, inviolability of the internationally recognized borders of states. So our expectation from India will be a firm support to the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and calling for the settlement of the conflict based on the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and implementation of the United Nations Security Council resolution. Because in fact, these are the main principles that the non-aligned movement is based on, and there is an also principled position of non-aligned movement, including India is a member, as I said, rendering this firm support to Azerbaijan. Let me be clear. So we would expect India separately on its own also to declare this position with regard to the settlement of the conflict.
So far, India has asked for a negotiated settlement, but that's the official position. But many would also look at how Azerbaijan and Armenia have treated, say, issues that India has to deal with. Armenia supports India in the United Nations on issues like Jammu and Kashmir and other internal problems, whereas Azerbaijan is seen as backing both Pakistan and Turkey on that issue. So there are lots of people who say, why should India, back Azerbaijan when this is its position?
Well, thank you for this question. Let me be clear about the position of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan's position is principled and is based on the norms and principles of international law. We always say that we are for the settlement of the conflicts based on the norms of international law and related resolutions of the United Nations Security Council. It also is about the Jammu and Kashmir issue, where we have declared our stance position that the United Nations Security Council resolutions should be implemented and the settlement should be firmly based on the norms and principles of international law.
Ms. Leyla Abdullayeva, thank you so much for your time, and we do hope that this ceasefire will at some point, at least for the short term, hold, and then both countries move towards some kind of a solution. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. I thank you.
You've been watching StratNews Global, and you can support us by logging onto our website. I'm Amitabh, Revi.